I can remember being in an office in Nowra where 4 people came and actually physically jumped me in the office. Mind you, I gave as good as I got. Well, my name's Gerry Moore. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Aboriginal Legal Service, New South Wales, ACT. And yeah, I live on the south coast but work here in Redfern. My first involvement with the Aboriginal Legal Service stems back to the late 70s, early 80s, where I began as a young person in the role of a field officer for the then South Coast Aboriginal Legal Service, and worked in that position for a period of about 5 years, maybe a little bit more. I left that position for quite some time and turned full circle and came back to be the Chief Executive Officer of the South Eastern Aboriginal Legal Service. Both of those legal services basically looked after the far south coast from Eden up to Nowra and also up to Canberra. The South Eastern Aboriginal Legal Service was a position that I held for about 2 years before becoming involved in the newly amalgamated service, which is now known as the Aboriginal Legal Service, New South Wales, ACT. Well, back in those days, there was no such thing as an average day because field officers basically worked on a 24-hour shift. What I mean by that is that you could work your normal day, and at any hour of the evening, or in fact night or early hours of the morning, if there was somebody in custody, it was then the role of the field officer to go and attend the police station, talk to the client, liaise with the police, family members, and depending on whether or not the person got bail, you would then transport them home to their house, and the process started all over again. But the main job is not much different than it is today, and that is to support the lawyers, to assist, to be, I guess, the cultural translator, if I could put it that way, between the lawyer, who was mostly non-Aboriginal, and the client, obviously, who was Aboriginal. Not many of the lawyers had much at all to do with Aboriginal people, but many of them stayed long enough to, you know, almost become part of communities in some cases where they were that well known and trusted. The Aboriginal Legal Service today has the core business, well in our service anyway, of crime, dealing with criminal matters, and care. So care being, you know, children, Aboriginal children who've been removed from their families. We work very closely with the Legal Aid Commission, and in some cases private practice, where we refer matters on of a civil and a family nature to other services or service providers. We have a prison and family support unit. It has a coordinator and about 6 field workers. They go in and out of the jails. They do transports from jails to perhaps rehabilitation centres. The Constitution as it is now holds that we have a certain number of members. From those members are chosen the directors, and those directors are the ones who actually empower, or they're the engine room for the whole organisation, because they're the ones who create the policies or, you know, give good guidance and direction to the executive, who are the second tier. They give me my direction on how I should be helping, or how I should be running the day-to-day business. And you couldn't do that if you didn't have a strong board and a credible board. One thing I'm really, really proud to say in New South Wales is that we have a good, strong board. And not just a board of Aboriginal people, but we have co-opted, you know, outside help, if you like, by having a couple of non-Aboriginal specialists, if you like, who help guide the whole process. But at the end of the day, it's an Aboriginal owned, run and fully operated organisation. And our mob should feel proud of that themselves. Yeah, well, in the early days, when they say that you fought for the legal service, I can tell you that you actually fought physically, because the good old, bad old days were days of takeovers in AGMs, and if people didn't like you or they had the biggest family group or whatever, you can find yourself either in a job or out of a job. Things have drastically changed since then, thank heavens. But you know, I can remember being in an office in Nowra where 4 people came and actually physically jumped me in the office. Mind you, I gave as good as I got, but you know, that shows you some of the rough and tumble of how the services started off, went through really hard times of teaching ourselves how we should be looking after our mob and so on, and finally evolved into what I think is a really good service now, where the focus is the client group. You had 6 separate services, and to bring them together like we did and create one entity was a mighty effort by what was called COLS, or the Coalition of Aboriginal Legal Services in New South Wales. People really decided that the clients were going to be better served by not protecting turf, by not, you know, having big egos, but by coming together as one service and looking at how we were going to service the whole of New South Wales and ACT. I never thought I'd live to, you know, witness the day when I thought that, or said that having one service was better than having 6. But that's how I feel now, that having one service is better than having 6 small services. It's getting the balance right of representation that that's tricky, but makes it relevant that you have representation from all of those different areas to make up the one service and give it its flavour of ensuring that the bush gets looked after as well as the regional or the metropolitan areas. So I think we've done a reasonable job. I think we've got a really good client focus. Not everyone will agree with that, but hey, you can't satisfy everyone either, you know. And the wonderful thing about democracy is we're all allowed to have our own opinions.